with us. So that's what makes this series so exciting day after day. The We Talk brings you the most prominent voices of the HR leaders who are donning the change makers hat at their respective organizations as they share their precious experiences and insights on and around the HR ecosystem. So to take this further, today we have the pleasure of Mr. Manmohan Kalsy, President, HR and Business Operations at Medi joining us. A brief introduction about him before we start. His key role is to align business outcomes with people practices at the company, which employs more than 5,000 employees and is also India's largest health tech and benefits administration company. Recently, he has served Inbrew Beverages and Go First Airlines as the head of human resource functions. Mr. Manmohan was a CHRO at United Breweries Limited from the year 2013 to 2020. He has also worked extensively as an executive director HR at Xerox, where he was also appointed on the board of the company as a whole-time director. This does not stop here. Across his stints at Gillette, PepsiCo, Airtel, Vodafone, Xerox, and UBL, Mr. Manmohan has led senior executive hiring at CEO and CXO levels and has been involved with multiple projects of startups, acquisitions, and mergers. So with that, a very warm welcome, Mr. Manmohan, to today's discussion. I need not mention that it is indeed a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure that I reciprocate, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to an interesting discussion, Mr. Manmohan. So to start off with today's discussion and to rather set in the context for this, my first question for you would be, you have worked across various industries over the years, right? So how is your industry right now tackling the changes that the workplace has undergone for the past couple of years? So if you could share a brief overview with us.
Okay. So we are a benefits administration company, a very dispersed organization. We need to position our workforce in areas wherever either our corporate accounts are, and we service something like 12,000 corporate accounts, and wherever we have a tie-up with the hospitals, because we do the claims administration on behalf of the insurers. And therefore, we cannot be a metro location only organization. And by virtue of that, we've been hiring at various places. And what has really happened, and when you mention about last couple of years, I infer it to be the COVID being a catalyst in how it has changed the dynamics at the workplace. So what it has meant to us is that we've got a very different location strategy now. So we've kind of, looked at locations which we weren't looking at previously, because if the whole idea is that the work can happen remotely as well, then why not look beyond our office locations and look at talent beyond our locations? But that brings in, its own challenges on how you can mentor the workforce that you bring in, how do you provide supervision to them in terms of their day-to-day work. So while they have tools to do their role, which is very, very transactional, but the soft skill side or the development side, mentoring, coaching, and supervision is challenging. Now, these are after effects of, going into locations where we were not earlier. At the locations where we always existed, it has its own challenges because different kind of set of people have emerged. Some want to work from home, some don't want to work from home, some want to work 5 days, some don't want to work 6 days. And, our operations are such that we need to deploy a lot of our workforce 6 days a week, because we are constantly helping our members to get discharged from the hospitals, and therefore the work doesn't stop. Yeah. So we have challenges of having different streams who want to work either from home or from office, between those set of people who want to work 5 days and others who want to work 6 days, and these are bringing its own challenges, because you got to then um, make your practices, particularly on the rewards and compensation, which are catered differently to people who are working different number of days in a week. You can't have same kind of structures for everybody, and therefore on the whole benefits piece, on the whole compensation side, we are now challenged on our rewards practices. So the changes at workplace are largely around location, where to work from, and how many days to work. And we are trying to adapt to the different sets of people. So that's where we stand at the moment.
Thanks for setting the context. You have indeed touched upon these three crucial points when you mentioned about the evolving, changing workplace scenario over the past few years. You have also already touched upon a very important point that I was about to ask you, that is the context of soft skill. So I would like to ask you that, talking about soft skills,
Right.
how do you see the importance of soft skills evolving in the near future?
So, Besaki, one very important aspect, and I firmly believe that even if the world had not gone through the COVID phenomena, which was extremely unfortunate, the soft skills would still be the, main cornerstone for developing and building any organization, because a lot of transactional jobs um, which required hard skills are already getting automated. They're getting replaced by AI, machines, by robotics, etc. And therefore, there's a lot of redundancy of hard skills in the whole world. Globally, you look at corporates, they don't need people who are bringing just hard skills, because the success at the workplace is very dependent on soft skills. And when I say soft skills, um, I mean things like communication skills, the ability to be creative, innovative, their ability to, deal with ethical issues, logical reasoning, and more importantly, the team skills, the ability to collaborate with colleagues, the ability to understand the customer's point of view. I think one of the growing needs going forward will continue to be that your customers will demand soft skills which are in the area of understanding consumers and customers, and therefore customer centricity, whichever organization decides to build its services or products around customer, will need these soft skills, and they will be at a premium, because they can't be simply automated. Even in 2023, as we speak, these are the only ones which remain to be automated. Most of the hard skills have already got wired into various things by tech. So tech is replacing hard skills, and soft skills will remain at a premium. The whole existence of HR organizations and leadership development and people development, supervisory development will all center around soft skills, and that's where most of the work will happen.
I believe, as you mentioned very correctly at the very beginning, that COVID, unfortunately, it has spiked up the, I would say, the necessity further, but it is something, the part of soft skill is something which, no matter how the situation arises in the near future, also, this is just going to grow. So thanks for touching upon some really important pointers. And with this, I'll move on to my next question. So, Mr. Manmohan, when we talk about any organization in today's world, a very crucial element that comes up in all our discussion is DE and I. So organizations are taking various, methods to amp up their diversity agenda. So as an organization, can you please throw some light on your DE and I agenda as to how you are working upon?
Okay. So firstly, I'm very privileged to work in an organization where the D of the D, E, and I is not a issue. I mean, in terms of sheer diversity, we have a very good record. We have nearly 50-50 representation on the gender side. So we have um, a fair representation of genders on our board, on our leadership team, on most of our managerial teams, and across locations and across functions. So the D part is very, very well handled. I would give credit to my predecessors who've really worked on this agenda. My experience across industries, and this is not limited to my current employer, is that companies struggle with the E part and the I part. You know, the E, equity, is such a powerful word. It's the it's the foundation if you want to build fairness in organizations. And I think very often companies do shortcut of just looking at internal parity versus bringing in diversity candidates and leaving it at that. But equity is a far more powerful measure in which you got to, assess yourself whether you are equitable in terms of not just giving somebody a certain position or a title, but also in terms of compensation, benefits, perquisites, stock options. And it's a very strong currency in my own book for organizations to look within and say that it's one thing of bringing diversity through your doors of the organization, but being equitable so that you actually appear fair is a completely different challenge, and it requires a lot of maturity and a lot of openness in the organization to work in that direction. Fortunately, these conversations happen in our boardrooms, in our leadership conversations, and we are very cognizant of the need to not just have representation on diversity numbers, but also be equitable when we bring diversity candidates. Okay. The third, pillar of DEI, it goes beyond just bringing in numbers or being equitable and fair to them. It's how in your culture the voice is heard. And it's not about just bringing in somebody, giving a job description for a role, giving the right compensation, but it's about, does my opinion count? And that is where I think the diversity candidates really judge a company. Even if there is no mechanism for it, they have voted it already in their mind. And therefore, to me, all the three aspects are equally important. I wouldn't say there is a sequence in which these should happen. And while you look at strengthening the diversity numbers, it's equally important to work on your culture and ensure that, people who come from another set of industry, they come from a different background, are respected in the organization, and their views and their opinions matter in the organization. So once you work on all of these three, then you could, really put a hand on heart and say, yes, we're driving the DEI agenda with all our conviction and passion.
Lovely, lovely to hear the thoughts. Lovely to know as how, as an organization, the three pillars are being individually taken care of so that none falls behind. Uh, so with this, I'll move on to the last question that I have for you. So something that have been steering up the ecosystem completely nowadays is the gig economy,
Right.
and I would love to know from you, with having such vast experience. So what, according to you, are some of the most prominent challenges that organizations in India are currently facing to utilize the gig economy at its full potential? What's your take on that?
Okay. So firstly, I will be very candid in admitting that the corporate side hasn't understood gig economy as well as the gig workers themselves understand. So, they are streets ahead in the understanding. The corporates and the India Inc. particularly is struggling because the concept was not very prevalent for a very long time in the country. And secondly, it falls outside the framework and purview of the traditional employer-employee relationship. And the classical HR folks like me have grown and developed on the lines of what our legislations have been around. So that determines how many hours somebody can work, what are the kind of welfare benefits you have to extend, what are the retiral benefits, etc. And when the gig economy is discussed, it does put all of us at a little uneasy spot in terms of completely understanding the framework, and we need to be honest about it. The industry needs to sharpen its own understanding of the gig economy, because it brings in a free market concept which is very opposite. It is 180 degrees different from the classical employer-employee relationship. It doesn't bind the gig worker to a lot of things in the organization, and therefore the organizations have this fear that they will not have a control over the gig worker. And therefore, I think there needs to be a lot of consensus building between what gig brings to the organization. I personally believe the organizations are losing a lot by not understanding this concept, and it's no longer necessary to have ultimate control over everybody who adds value to the organization. And there will be a lot of skills where you can bring freelancers who can come on a few days for a few hours, either work out of your offices or work on your platforms remotely and contribute to the growth of the organization. But I think going forward, the silver lining will be that certain skills which will be very scarce in the market will force industry to really adopt this economy, and try it out. I think this will only grow. The challenges there are, how do you help gig workers really grow their own practice beyond your organization? So, and I'm aware that there are challenges when gig workers want to either raise capital or funding to grow their idea into a practice or into a full organization. So it's a concept which I think the industry needs to discuss more often. The platforms that people use, and HR is the most networked fraternity with so many roundtables and conclaves and conferences. I think this is one item on the agenda which we need to really brainstorm far more and come up with our action plan to promote and understand the concept far better than we do at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Manmohan. Though I mentioned that that was the last question, but your response kind of intrigued me to add
Sure.
something further. So you mentioned at the very beginning that the Indian corporates are yet to understand the mindset which the gig workers already have. And at the same time, you have also touched upon a couple of pointers, like you mentioned, more conversation, sharpening the very basic concept of gig workers are some of the areas that organizations need to look upon.
Right.
I just want to know from you one thing, that if I ask you one best practice that as an organization can be taken up to start the basic homework at their end, one best practice if you can share to understand that concept, to bridge the gap rather that is there in the ecosystem right now. So if you can share something on that line.
I think the organizations need to look within, and there are always one or two streams, whether they're around the tech aspects, they're around, say, specialists on legal side, or a certain practice within HR. So let me, step back and say that if I need to, bring in a specialist for which I don't foresee a full 12 months kind of work, and I don't see a career beyond 2 to 3 years within the HR function. For example, somebody who will help us uh, have a sharper HR tech understanding, then I don't need to staff my organization. I can go to a specialist who may be working with another three organizations, and I would be perfectly at ease as long as my company information isn't going outside and we have the protection of NDAs, etc. And I think the practice which you have asked me to list down would be not just looking within, but for HR to be the evangelist for gig economy, the need to, advise our boards, our leadership teams on the benefits and encourage them to try it out. Because of our lack of understanding, it's not being tried out.
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manmohan, for sharing those wonderful thoughts with us. And with that, we come to the end of our conversation today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you one more time for sharing such fantastic knowledge and giving your time to us, rather. And I did not mention that it was absolutely a pleasure conversing with you today. And
Thank you
for
so
our audiences who have joined us today, so thank you for joining us one more time. And we will be back very soon with yet another exciting conversation. So till then, stay tuned, everyone.